Hi guys, welcome back to BGP tutorial part 3. This time around, I wanted to highlight the difference between the internal BGP and external BGP. The previous two videos, it was exclusively external BGP. We had AS100, router from AS100 talking to, connected to, or establishing a peer relationship with the router B and AS200. Three things I wanted to highlight the difference between external BGP and internal BGP. First is their administrative distance. Any route learned outside of AS100, by default in Cisco router, they'll get uh, administrative distance of 20. And then anything learned within AS internally, it's going to have by default 200. So that's one difference between the two. Another difference is that the restriction on of hop count. As you might have noticed on the previous video, we have to increase the hop count when we use the loopback interface to establish the nevership between the two routers. In internal BGP, you don't have to do that. There is no restriction. And number three, uh, the three is that one of the requirements for internal BGP is that fully meshed. So if you have several routers here in AS100, let's say for example we have like four routers, then they need to be fully mesh connected. So that's one of the requirements of internal BGP. Just those three, and I wanted to basically highlight this difference. So I did not reload and erase the previous configuration. So I did a show run briefly, section BGP. And on router A, like I said earlier about, so for neighbor 3.3.3.3 remote AS100, so it's going to be internal router. And then I didn't even have to put the multi-hop because there's no restriction for internal BGP. all I all I make sure that I'm forcing the BGP to still use the loopback interface to talk to router C down here. And so there's nothing that we need to change on router B. All we got to do is basically adding another router on AS100. So let's configure router C really quick. So let's configure the Ethernet 0/0 IP address. This would have 10.1.20.2, 5.255.255.0. No short. Exit for loopback interface 0. It's going to be IP address 3.3.3.3, 255.255.255. Exit for the simulated network behind router C. We're going to use loopback interface 1, IP address 33.33.33.1, 35.25.25.0. Exit, and we'll create an static IP route pointing to RA. It's going to be 1.1.1.1 and 525.25.25, and that goes to 10.1.20.1. All right. Show IP interface brief. Include all the up interfaces. Okay, everything is up. Let's go ahead and configure the router BGP process in router C, BGP 100. So it's going to have the same AS. I'm going to put a neighbor 1.1.1. Remote AS is going to be 100 because it's going to be an internal BGP. Neighbor 1.1.1. We're forcing the BGP to use our loopback 0 to talk to it. And then after that, let's advertise our network, which is a 33.33.33.0. mask 255.255.255.0 end. So let's, as you can see here, router A saw the neighbor and it's showing it's up. So let's do a quick check. Show IP BGP summary, and yep, voila. So it says router A said, "Hey, I got a prefix from my neighbor 2.2.2.2, which is router B." And also it says that, hey, I also got a prefix from the other neighbor, which is my internal neighbor. It's going to be 3.3.3.3. So one of the difference, so I showed you earlier about the different configuration, the difference in configurations. This one, we don't have to increase the multi-hop count, but the other difference is the administrative distance. So when you do show IP route, BGP, and this is what you'll see. See, by default, if it's internally learned within the AS100, by default, Cisco will assign an administrative distance of 200. As you can see, router A learned the prefix or the subnet 3.33.33.33.0/24 from router C. And since router C is um, within AS100, which is internal BGP, so it gets at 200. So that's all I wanted to show you guys, the difference between the internal BGP and external BGP. Just remember the difference in administrative distance, the restrictions on the hop count, and also for the iBGP, all the routers within the AES has to be fully meshed. And then sometimes if you have so many routers within AES, the mesh can be very complicated and it can go out of hand. But there are ways that you can circumvent that by using a route reflector and also configuration. I will show you that those configurations later on down as we progress to our video series. All right, guys. See you next. I'll see you guys in my next video.